Good evening. Well, my name is Fred Say. I'm currently the president of NAACP. I'll be your moderator for our NAACP Unity Forum. I would like to thank the community and the Burlington Police Department and any other city official that may be in attendance. We have all seen the recent shootings and violence across our country on TV, which is caught on cell phones and police body cams, car cameras. The shooting of unarmed black men and boys like Elton Sterling and Mr. Castle, and the ongoing shooting of police officers. The Des Moines Register took a poll of Iowans who stated 63% feel that the shootings could take place in Iowa. And we had an NAACP meeting and we was talking about that. And we felt there's a need to bring the police and the community together for dialogue in hopes of not having a racial or police shooting in Burlington. We felt that we need solidarity to learn to understand each other, improve relationships, earn respect and trust. We need to do away with the fear and anger on both sides. This forum is not to verbally attack the police or each other, but to look at positive ways to improve relationships and to build a more safe environment for our families in our richly diverse city. I will ask direct questions to the police department and give time for the community to make suggestions or ask questions themselves. So if you want to ask a question or say something or make a statement, you've got this long mic with a cord on it, it only goes so far, so try to bear with us to connect up. As you talk loud when I need it. I recently spoke with Judy Bradshaw during my trip to Des Moines. The NAACP went there on the 9th and met with the governor, Chief Justice, and Attorney General Tom Miller. During my trip to Des Moines, after meeting with the governor and Iowa attorney, I had voiced my concern about police relationships. They informed me that I need to speak to Judy Bradshaw, who is the ex-police chief of Des Moines, and who is now over the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. She stated the training at the academy had recently been revised. She gave me a list of their training offered. And one of the concerns I had was race relations. And in that, certain things where I saw that stood out that they were at least working on. One was community relationships, one of their trainings. Culture competency, race relations, crisis and conflict, defensive tactics, which she felt that did a lot with dealing with de-escalation training. Verbal defense. They also addressed more of the mental health issues, mental health crisis, mental health first aid, dealing with special need populations. They also deal with hate crimes. They deal in their firearms training, they also take de-escalation training. So my first question to Chief here, but before we even start, why don't you guys introduce yourselves, time and service, who your best friend is?
We start. My name is Darren Grimshaw, lifelong resident of Burlington, lived in town 50 years now, grade school, middle school, high school, graduated from Southeastern Community College, had a lifelong dream of entering law enforcement. Pursued that, was hired by the Burlington Police Department in 1988, went through the ranks of patrol, detective, lieutenant, promoted about 3 or 4 years ago to the rank of major. Been with the department about 29 years now. Currently sit as the administrative major, so I deal a lot with some of the issues that we're talking about: policy development, recruiting, hiring. Deal with a lot of the training issues in our department. Like I said, lifelong resident. Lived in Burlington, plan on retiring in Burlington, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to have a meeting like we're having tonight. I think that goes a long ways in speaking where our community is at and where we're headed. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. First and foremost, that's what I want to say. Thanks. I think this was a great idea. Freddie called and we had a discussion, and then he came down and met me down at the department, and I thought, you know, it's great to get a dialogue going and kind of see where we're at and where we need to be. And with that said, I moved to Burlington in 1987. I've been in Burlington ever since. I've raised my family here in Burlington, and I plan on staying in Burlington. So Burlington's my home as well. But I started with the police department January 1st of 1988. Kind of the same story as Major Grimshaw. I've made a career out of it, and I've worked at the Burlington Police Department my entire career, and just kind of came up through the ranks. And fortunate enough, I feel very fortunate to be the chief of police at Burlington and work towards every day making the Burlington Police Department a better place to be. And the same thing goes for the city of Burlington. So, I mean, it's a great community. It's a giving community. It's a great community to work for. And you really got a bunch of people down there at 424 North 3rd that feel the same way. That truly care about the outcome of this community and where it goes. So, thanks again. Thanks so much for having us. And we'll do our best to answer your questions.
My name is Dennis Kramer, and what you're going to find out about these stories between Major Grimshaw, Chief Beard, and myself is we all started about the same time on the police department. The same year, he started in late 87 or early 87, and I started in 88. So we're right in the same time frame of starting on the department, and I've moved to this community, and I've raised my family here. My kids, they're off doing what they're doing now. I'm a member of this community and invested. I'm invested in what our police department is doing in the community and what we try to do every day and help this community to be a safe place to work and everyone to live. And with that being said, I come up through the department, just as Major Grimshaw said, and my title down there is the Major of Operations. And my responsibilities are the day-to-day operations of the officers that work on the street and the officers that do the investigation and how they do that. And as Major Grimshaw said, we talk about policies and how they implement those policies and make sure everything's in accordance with those. That's my responsibility down there. And of course, I answer at the chief's direction, and I want to thank everybody also in the room for giving us this opportunity, because there's a lot of things that the communication breaks down and people don't know what we're trying to do, and we don't know what the expectations are. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll state this, I'll just put it to you guys, could you give us an idea of what your training is in Burlington? Because I know the training, once you leave the academy, is up to each and individual police department. It's not said, I don't think that they have to take, or is it?
No, I mean, you're very correct about that. I mean, we kind of set out our own curriculum and criteria and what we expect. I mean, there's ongoing hours that you have to have, but that's, other than there's a few mandatory trainings with mental health and then blood flow pathogen, CPR, those things. But other than that, the training is pretty much left up to us and what we want to do. And we're fortunate, I mean, Mr. Fernod's in the office, and he gives us a lot of money each year, you know, $25,000 to $30,000 he sets aside so we can properly train our officers. And I think if you looked at departments our similar size, I think you'd see that training budget probably exceeds what they're doing. So how do we use that? I kind of made a list, but we'll kind of go through this, and I want to set the stage here. They go to the academy, and you kind of talk about the 14-week curriculum that they have at the academy. Well, that's in theory, and those are basics. And so when they come back here, how do we put that theory to work? And then in what direction do we want to form these officers, and how do we want them to culturally become part of our police department and what we're trying to accomplish? So some of the things we do for diversity type training, ethics, we teach them ethical decision making, keeping that in mind, fair and impartial policing. We have some civil rights courses online that we give through the, I don't know if you've heard of the Policing in the 21st Century. It was kind of a document that President Obama had several chiefs across the country, and they worked together to kind of collaborate on how we can improve community relationships. So some of that is online by the Department of Justice. If you've ever been to their website, it's extremely detailed on the training that they have available. So we do utilize that. Disparities in justice, Iowa's diverse populations, racial profiling and beyond black and white, harassment and racial profiling, safeguarding privacy, civil rights and liberties, ethical leadership and law enforcement, race, the power of illusion, religions, cultures, communities, immigration issues. And just very recently, I don't know if you've been following the paper, but the bridges training has become extremely important to us. I went to the first training that they had, and it became really obvious to me that there's some extreme cultural differences. And we have to learn how to communicate in these cultural differences. And so the whole staff now at the Burlington Police Department has been trained in bridges. And starting in February, we have what's called our in-service training. And there's a spin-off of bridges. It's called Tactical Communications. And it's directed from the bridges profile right at law. And so I read the book. Vern Reed gave me the book. I read the book. Excellent book. Made a lot of sense to me. So in February, we're going to train the whole department in tactical communication as it relates to people in poverty and the whole Bridges initiative. To kind of get our arms around that, as I think the community is going to embrace this initiative, and we need to certainly be part of that in our communication. So we're all in on that. We also teach verbal judo, which is a de-escalation technique. I mean, that's always our goal in any use of force situation is de-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate. So, I mean, and the more you can put that in front of them, the better off that we're all going to be. And then obviously, use of force. I mean, now they have a lot of what they call force-on-force scenarios, which it used to be you would just train in the use of force. In other words, the step method, or we start with verbal and then maybe hands-on, and then if we have to go to a pepper spray or a striking instrument, it just kind of goes up this tree, if you will. Well, use of force really isn't trained that way anymore. These are all just options. We have these options, and we kind of base that on the scenario at the time. Well, unless you're trained into those scenarios, how do you really ever put that into play? So we do a lot of that force-on-force type training. In other words, here's the scenario, and how'd you react to it? We've been fortunate enough a couple times at the police department to have what they call a BAF machine. And it's a firearm simulation type training where it's an actual screen that you interact with. And they run all these different scenarios at you. And it could go anywhere from somebody pulling a gun or somebody that looks like they're getting a gun and it's a cell phone. You have to make all these force-on-force decisions right there in front of you. So, I mean, that's also extremely important to us too. So it's kind of a breakdown on the different training we do. But let me back up a little bit. When they come out of the academy, they go into our FTO process. And in this process, how many task sheets are there, Major?
Oh, there's well over, I think there's somewhere in between 75 and 100, I think we have task sheets, just breaking down the different tasks, individualizing what we do day to day, whether it be answering a burglary call or something that's a little more serious as holding a crime scene, whether it's a homicide, something of that nature. So we go through all them task sheets during the FTO program, and that usually, after the academy, like the chief talked about, it usually runs another 4 months through a step process for them to work their way through that. And part of that training, and I just did the last 2 officers that are in the last step this year, is the Constitution assignment, so they understand what people's rights are. So it's an assignment that they get early on. When they go to the academy, they're taught some of that at the academy. When they come back, I ask that they answer certain questions about the Constitution, and we spend quite a bit of time going over it. It's one of the larger things that they do, and some of them really dread it, but in the end, I think they learn a lot. They learn a lot about what their jobs are and how it relates to people's rights and how to affect, your job as a police officer within those guidelines. So the FTO program is quite detailed.
Yeah, and so that's when we start to bring in some of the other type of training that I just listed off here. But that training's ongoing. I mean, they get that training throughout the whole course of their career. And so, you know, each year annually we figure out the budget that we have and then maybe what's on the forefront or what's really burning that's really good. And, you know, like this year for 4 hours, we're going to, like I said, get everybody trained in the Bridges Initiative. I think it's that crucial that our department knows exactly those cultural differences and why sometimes we have these communication breakdowns. And the closer we can get at being better at verbally communicating, the closer we're going to be better off in every situation.
Does anybody have a question or suggestion to me?
Well, I just have a comment when you're talking about culture enforcement. I mean, just in the last couple of years, I was really impressed because I think your officers have encountered dangerous situations. A man walking down the sidewalk with a shotgun was an opportunity that maybe other people would have shot him. He had a weapon. And then you had a man who was mentally ill in the middle of the street coming at you with a knife and no one harmed him. So I think that sometimes we don't always know the situations that are going on and how we deal with them, but I keep track of them. And so I just wanted to say how impressed I was with the way that your officers handled all these situations.
Right.
Can you give an example of, you talked about, you know, the cultural difference, language difference, that kind of thing. Can you give an example of what might be in the Bridges training that says, you know, and this is a difference in this situation that you need to be aware of to make things better?
Great, I'm so glad you brought that up because, yeah, I can think of a couple of them because it hits so home with me. I spent so many years on the night shift patrol, and would this be frustrated? It's like, I don't understand why you're so upset with me. I come here to help you. Well, they're not upset at all. I mean, we're learning that people that are maybe struggling with their life, whether it goes way beyond, when you talk about poverty, we can't just talk about financial, because it goes way beyond that. There's maybe a whole host of resources that they don't have access to. But as they go through life, they have to be very demanding, if you will, or their voice might be very loud. And it's just because every day in life, that's how they have to get through life. I mean, they're not planning their day a day ahead, a week ahead, a month ahead. We're planning this 30 minutes ahead, an hour ahead. And so, and also something that was crucial with that is the theme of telling a story. I mean, I really remember people just looking at me, trying to tell me this story. And I'm like, I got 10 minutes. I got 4 more calls going. I need the facts. What's your name, what's your address, what's your date of birth, and what happened? When really, they take that as you're being rude, and you don't have any respect for me, and you're not willing to listen to me. And all those years, and nobody ever told me why. Why is that? And now I know exactly why. And so trust me, that's why we're training. We're going to take the first 5 or 6 minutes, and we're going to talk about these stories. And we're going to build that rapport. And then we're going to go into why do I need to be here. That's just one perfect example, Orlando, that I know will make a difference in becoming upset versus, oh, now I know why this happened. I know why this is this reaction. And it doesn't have anything to do with me or anything to do with the police, but it sure has to do with the trouble and the struggles that they're having in their life. So, yeah, great question.
Chief, you mentioned something about racial profiling. The NAACP has filed a bill about racial profiling. And I was just wondering, I think there's 15 counties, I believe, in Iowa that actually have some type of policy on racial profiling. We don't. Burlington has it. Basically, they got the code of ethics instead of something directly associated with racial profile. Do you see a need for that, say, in Burlington? Would you be supportive of that if there was one developed here?
Yeah, we'd obviously be supportive of that. I mean, we train that, and we explain to our people constantly about racial profiling and what that means. And they all fully understand exactly what that means. And we're here to do a job, and we're here to do it equally, and we're here to do it fair for all. And that's the bottom line. And if you have some ill intent against somebody based on their race or their gender or what have you, trust me, there's gonna be a price to pay for that. We don't do business that way.
Chief, I have a question. My name is Ronnie Gray. I'm not from the Burlington area, but I do pastor a church here, Old Temple Christian Church at 400 South Woodlawn. I reside in Gilbert, Iowa, originally from Peoria, Illinois. My question is this: what type of programs are available to the community and to the officers, such as self-defeating behaviors, relapse prevention, stress management? And I ask this question because a lot of times no one knows what state of mind that officer is in before he gets on the block. No one knows what state of mind that resident, that person living in that neighborhood are going through. And by not knowing, you have an officer and you have a resident who 9 out of 10 end up clashing with one another, and neither of them are patient, understanding. And a lot of these things are kept secret because bottom line is no one wants to talk about what they're struggling with. Whether that officer is going through a bad relationship, or the child is out of hand, or he's threatened with a divorce. Officers are under a lot of pressure. We realize that. But so are the people. As you mentioned, it's not always a financial thing. Most of the time, it's a mental thing. And man, so my question is, what's available? And if there is anything available to the community, are they aware of it? And if they are aware of it, we need to find out why they're not using what's available to them.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't tell you what might be available to the community for that, but I can sure speak to what's available to our police officers for that. I mean, we have a program within the city that's absolutely free of charge, 100% confidential, and it's EAP. It's the Employee Assistance Program. But they can call hotline 24/7, and we also have other hotlines for police officers and police officers only, because you bring up a staggering point. I mean, suicide amongst police officers is a terrible, terrible thing, and it's rampant. And so with that, I mean, I was fortunate enough in 2009 to attend the FBI National Academy, and police mental wellness was really starting to come to the forefront then, and I had a chance to research that in detail. And that's one thing I promised the staff of the Burlington Police Department when I took over, is we are going to care, and we are going to be extremely concerned about the mental health of our officers. And we're going to check with them all the time. And we're going to ask them those personal need questions. Because if your personal needs aren't met, you're in for a bad day. You are 100% right about that. And we know that, and we take that very seriously. Could there be something slip by us? Sure. I think it happens in every police organization across the country. But that certainly would never be our intent. We have absolute open door policies at the department. And I have noticed over the course of time, as this cultural change started to happen, now more and more people are coming to the office and going, hey, you got a minute? Closing the door, sharing some things that were unheard of to be shared just in very, very recent history. So I think we got a long way to go with mental health and police. But I think that it has become a recognized, I won't say problem, but a recognized concern. And we are on the forefront of that. I can promise you that. So,
Well, I'm glad you answered that question, and you answered it well. I spent 8 years in the chemical dependency field while living in Peoria, and I never knew what state of mind my clients were in until they got there, when we had our one-on-ones.
exactly.
And you'll be amazed at what goes through the minds of people. I know that I'm going to just step out on faith and speak for those who are here. We need our police officers, but we also need to know what those families are going through and what the officers are going through, and are they taking advantage of what's available.
Okay, we'll look at that. A couple of things you talk about the community that are going on right now. Obviously, we realize there's a couple of things happening. One, mental health access is low. I mean, there's just not a lot of it out there right now. And we all know that a lot of people struggle with mental health issues these days. And it could very well be a chemical dependency counselor. You understand the problems that we're dealing with on a daily basis. It may not necessarily be a mental health issue, but it could be a chemical dependency, whole host of things. A lot of it has to do with depression. And then when you bring a police officer in, maybe he's had a stressful day, stressful week, now he's encountering people that are having issues of their own, it can turn volatile. And we've seen that happen. So there's several things going on right now. I happen to be a member of the Des Moines County Living Well Committee, and that's being done through the Great River Medical Center. They are compiling information and looking at resources available in the community. The library actually carries a database that's available on their website that has all of the resources available in Des Moines County, whether it's mental health, assistance for housing, counseling, free legal aid. It's got all of these resources available. One of the things that came up in this committee discussion, though, was, okay, the committees or the resources are available and they're on this website, but we have so many people that don't know that that resource list exists. So part of what this committee is looking at is, how do we get that out to the general public? And more specifically, how do we get that out to the demographics in our community that A, don't have access to the computers, B, aren't up on current events, or maybe aren't listening to the local news on a daily basis, for whatever their reasons are. How do we get this information out to them? Because they're the ones that need that resource the most. Now, a lot of it's coming through a referral, whether it be community action, Young House, the police department, the hospital. We're offering that information and we're putting that information out. We're making that resource list available, but we're looking for maybe more efficient ways of doing that. We're working on those details right now. Other thing we're currently working on right now is looking at implementing what's called crisis intervention teams. And that's going to be a concept that brings law enforcement together, and we're following models right now at Johnson County, the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids area. We're currently doing it in Kansas City, and some of the other larger metropolitan Oklahoma cities got a crisis intervention. Dallas Police Department. It's kind of a new concept, but they bring counselors, mental health counselors, they bring judges, they bring the hospitals, law enforcement, and they bring EMS together. And they create these crisis intervention teams. What happens is law enforcement typically is the first line. We come across someone, and we know that they're suffering from depression, some sort of a mental illness. Law enforcement today, right now, unless they're threatening to harm themselves or someone else, we leave them in their home, we leave them on the street, and walk away from them. We try to give them as much counseling as we can at that time, but our resources are limited. The hospital's not going to take them because they're not threatening themselves, they're not threatening anyone else. They've not committed a criminal offense, and unfortunately, Major Kramer's daughter was hugely involved in this program, where she directly worked in the jails, kind of brought this to the forefront for us. She said, hey, we got a lot of people in our jails. They're there because they're suffering from mental illness. And so it's a problem, but we're starting to look at working with the mental health field right now in Des Moines County, with law enforcement and Great River Medical Center, taking this by leaps and bounds on how we can all work together and start providing some of those services. The resource allocation also, and I don't remember, Mr. Cullen, the program that's going on at the schools right now, the
YouthNet.
YouthNet. Maybe, can you explain YouthNet, because it's huge right now?
YouthNet, we've compiled a list of all the services available in our community and the greater Burlington area. And then we allow them to come into the school. We provide them space so they can meet with the children at school. And then we have also expanded it to after school so that the children and families can receive services within the school. And again, much like Major Grimshaw said, we've got a complete list of all the service providers. We've met with them countless times. We've got processes and practices in place. We've opened up our doors and encouraged families to come see us and get the help that they so dearly need so they can function effectively within our community.
So hopefully that will add a little bit more to kind of what's going on and what's coming in the future, so.
It did, because I know in Peoria, you know, this, I had a lot of my clients were court ordered. They didn't want to be there. And those were the toughest ones to work with because they didn't want to be there. Well, sometimes we find that in everyday life and any position you're in. Sometimes you just don't want to be there. And you don't want to be hassled. It's easy to snap. So that's why I asked what type of training that our officers were getting so that they can pinpoint immediately this person.
Well, we just this year went through, all of our officers just 4 months ago, went through 4 hours of training on not only recognizing deficiencies amongst ourselves, recognizing the officer that, hey, something's wrong, he's not acting quite right, or he's having an issue or a problem, we need to sit down and talk with him, recognizing that within ourselves, recognizing depression, whatever it may be. But we've also received a lot of training on how do we recognize mental health issues when we're dealing with people. And so that was about 3 hours of our training that all of the officers in our whole department received about 3 months ago. So we keep recurring that types of training because we know that's a huge issue right now.
Thank you very much.
I got another thought.
Yes,
I was just going to mention that, can you talk a little bit about the chaplaincy program and the role that it plays? Because I think that's a tremendous asset for your guys. And I don't know if you can stress enough the role that mental health is beginning to play in just increasing in the interactions that you have. This is a problem that's getting bigger. And the loss of resources at the state level does not help this. And it's just, you can have efforts for coordination that can help to assist with it, but this is something that's going to continue to expand.
Yeah, I mean, first I'll talk about the chaplain program a little bit. It's actually one of the longest standing programs in the state of Iowa, and for sure we have the most chaplains here in Burlington that are part of the police department in the whole state of Iowa. I think we're up to 18 or 19 chaplains now. But they assist us in a lot of different things, whether it's officer wellness, or if we have a death message to deliver, or any of those high stress situations. Like the major was saying, some people that are really having some bad mental issues, and we don't have a lot of time to spend with them, and there's no mental health resources out there. Our chaplain corps is super helpful in coming in to spend time and maybe at least offer some faith-based type help, or at least services that they can seek out or have a chance to spend time with. So that program has just been absolutely wonderful for us. So, and with what Mr. Furneaux is saying, as we have studied this 21st police century, I highlighted a couple things, and it's just strictly about this mental health. And if you got this second, it's only a couple sentences, but I want to read this to you. And it talks about diversity in the workforce, race relations, and serving the underrepresented are issues that need to be tackled head on. Mental health and homelessness are two important social conditions that need to be addressed by the entire community, not just the police, whose expertise and resources are not designed to serve these groups or address these issues. So that's exactly what we're talking about here, and the major participation in these other groups that have that training and that ability to work with the people. So when we were talking about this and I read that paragraph, I thought that is a paragraph I have to highlight and read, because it is exactly that. It's this whole entire community, and we got to work on this thing together, because homelessness in Burlington, Iowa is a big deal too. We're going to talk a little bit about that with Safe Man as we go on.
Hey, did anybody else got anything else? Go ahead.
My name is Soldier Nelson, and I also live in Cape Cod. How has your department found money to send your officers? Because we hear that there's a lot of money available for the officers to train.
Yeah, I don't think there is a lot of money available. The only way I can say it is we're extremely fortunate. I mean, we have a community that really supports the police department, and with that, they support the budget that Mr. Furneaux puts forward. We make those requests that, hey, this training is necessary. This training is something that we have to have to be successful in this community. And he's really, really tight. When it comes to that, he's pretty flexible, so we're blessed to have
I
him.
do want to add something for perspective, not just for the department, which you're getting at, but for all of the services within the community. One of the points that I want council to be our city council to be cognizant of, our different departments to be thinking of. We can't do everything. We can't afford to do everything. But the things that we do, we need to make sure that the people have the proper equipment and the proper training to do it well. And that what they put forward for a budget for those types of things, I want to make sure that get hit, because they can't fail because of lack of training.
State your name too.
My name's Rick Johnson. I'm with the Unitarian Universalist Church. My daughter is in the Army Criminal Investigation Division. One of the things they are stressing as people leave that and possibly go into civilian policing is the issue of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I wanted to ask what resources you have in your hiring process, in the screening process for new officers, that might highlight people coming in who may have PTSD issues, than what kind of treatment you can get them to get any kind of a triggering out in the field. I know I've read several studies about the concerns of police officers from a military background coming into a civilian background with undiagnosed or untreated PTSD, and how that may be leading to incidents of violence in the field. I wanted to know what you have available to you to help you identify that and get treatment.
Well, there's a couple different things. I mean, if it was a pre-hiring, I mean, we're going to test all of those applicants. And we give them personality tests, social tests, polygraph tests, and we start to get a real good feel there if we thought there was something going on. And what resource would we provide at that point? Probably not much of anything. But here's what we've learned as we talk about, this goes right back to what he was saying and some of the research we've done, is I think that is very, very prevalent in law enforcement. Has it been recognized that way nationally? It's just beginning to be. And here's what happens in law enforcement. It's called the hypervigilance cycle. And 1 minute, we're dealing with somebody that has a knife, getting ready to stab their wife. Somehow we make it through that to you cut your grass shorter than mine. And I wish you wouldn't do that. And so this goes on all day. All day. But what starts to happen over the course of time is the bucket gets fuller and fuller and fuller. And that's what we have to be so cognizant of. How do we drain that bucket? Get that anxiety level back down, get away from it, get back to our baseline and start this cycle over again. Well, we truly believe that the 12-hour shift has worked miracles in our department for the hypervigilance cycle. And the reason I say that, yeah, they're there for a longer day, but they don't have to work near as many days as they do on a 6 and 3 schedule versus a 12-hour schedule. And so they're guaranteed every other weekend off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that is a really good time to be with family, to be with friends, to coach baseball, football, interact with the community, interact with family, and get that bucket back down here. And so that's the best way I can answer it. And you can be rest assured that over the course of time, that is a very, very difficult thing to deal with police officers. And we are well aware of that. It's an extremely valid point. I think in the military it happens to them so much faster because of the intensity that they're under. But police are under that same intensity just over a lot longer period of time. And as these officers become well into their career, if they weren't dealing with these issues like we didn't, tough going home, come back the next day, it's not done that way anymore. If we have an officer that's involved in a critical incident, they're going to go to counseling whether they want to or not. That's part of policy. But we've changed the culture enough now, they're going, I want to. Who can I go see? Who can I go talk to? And so those are steps all in the right direction. And as we treat them that way early in their career, I'm really going to believe that helps keep that bucket empty. And so it doesn't build up to this point where, I mean, you have such a valid point. I mean, it gets full and all of a sudden we snap and do something that would be way out of character. That's a great.
To finish up on her question, just real quick, there are a lot of resources that will come in for free. We did all of our mental health training this year, 100% free. Start calling around and you look at people that have expertise in certain fields, University of Iowa hospitals, you start calling local mental health providers, you start calling Great River Medical Center, you start calling all these places going, hey, we need training for our officers. And they're like, what do you want? What do you need? And they come in. We've even had them go, give me 6 weeks and I'll do all the research and I'll put the PowerPoints together and I'll come in and train on whatever you need, but I need to research it more. So, yeah, they're out there. It's just a matter of picking up the phone and looking for them.
University of Northern Iowa, we get you a couple names from there too. They're extremely helpful.
Owen T. Sloan. Been here in Burlington since 1984, and at that time been here with my employer. I too want to commend the police officers for what they do. I was in, so I know what you're up against. I was in the first and graduated from the first Citizens Police Academy back in the early 90s. So I had a chance to do all the stuff that they do and ride and shoot the gun and all that kind of stuff. But Fred started this conversation about, his question was about racial profiling. And to me, that's kind of glossed over that and gone on to this 15, 20 minute talk about other things. So I think that is a problem here in Burlington. You know, I'm not going to go into, I just want to say generally because I've got a very specific incident that I could talk about, but I can, Major Kramer knows about it. We've talked about it, and I still think it's a problem, the problem that we have. But what are you doing about racial profiling? Because I see it, I'm sure other people see it. You see a black person, young kid stopped, and there's 15 police cars around them. They stop them, they'll follow them because they'll say, you got a rear tail light or license plate light out. And then it goes on from there. They can follow them for several blocks. And then they see that tail light or that license plate, and then they can jump on it. So what are we doing? I mean, how is this, does this happen all the time?
I guess if you could give me some specific incidents that we could look at.
Yeah, I'll talk about mine. In May, my wife was coming home from the Hy-Vee. She left the Hy-Vee on Engler, went south on 9th Street, turned west on South Street, went to, we live on South 14th, made a left turn going south on our street on 14th, got to 14th and Acres, and got hit by a lady, the young lady didn't see her. The lady said, I didn't see it, it's my fault, everything's my fault. My wife didn't have her cell phone, so she walked 2 blocks down to me, I was outside, come back, waited for the police officer to come, make his report. The lady that hit my wife was white. This lady got 2 tickets, not one. First ticket was failure to yield. The next ticket was no driver's license. This lady was able to get in her car and drive away. The officer and her talked about her license and said, you better get to work on this. And she said, well, I'm working on it. The officer, when he made his report, he's got his big computer screen, he knew that she had no license there. And he knew that she hadn't had a license for over 4 years. So this tipped me off because I called Des Moines and they said, yeah, because I got the report, paid $10, $11 to get an accident report down at the police station. And I called them and they said, yeah, she hasn't had a license for 4 years. So when I came down, talked to Major Kramer about this, and I just want to know what the policy was because I've been following the paper since then, and I see people arrested for habitual offender, no driver's license, and what's the other one? There's 3 things. No, it's about license, habitual offender or something.
Driving while barred or like.
Yeah, driving while barred. And they're arrested. Now, if this lady that hit my wife had been, or my wife had hit her in the same incident, I'll bet my pension, monthly pension against any of yours monthly pension, that she would have been arrested and taken to jail. And the officer said, well, no, excuse me. Major Kramer said, well, maybe she let it go because she was just going to go home. I said, no, she wasn't going home, she was going to work. She told the officer in front of myself and my wife, no, I'm going to work. So, I mean, what's the difference here?
I can't answer the specific incidents.
Well,
that
you
we
can't,
have.
but maybe Kramer.
I understand that, and I think in the scope of what we're discussing, there are concerns, and obviously across the country, there are concerns about issues of racial profiling, the instruction of officers, the direction of officers, the education of officers, and how they deal with their day-to-day routine. Racial profiling in Burlington, has it existed? Does it exist? I would be crazy to stand up here and tell you it probably hasn't. I'd be crazy to do that. Now, what I will tell you is that we understand the difficulties of sometimes dealing with biases of not only members of the community, but law enforcement officers. And those are things as administrators, we have to look at every day. We're going to have officers make bad decisions, make decisions based on biases. We're going to have them make decisions sometimes out of haste because they may be upset or mad. Not right. That all comes back to training. That all comes back to proper supervision. That comes back to dealing with policies that affect change in a positive manner. Those types of incidences have to be brought up to us. You walking in the front door and talking to Major Kramer and expressing your displeasure, concern, or question about that incident allows us the opportunity to sit down and look at each individual incident and then determine, A, do we have an officer or officers that are acting outside the scope of policy, that are acting on biases? That's the reason why we're here today. That's the whole reason. Darren Grimshaw is a 52-year-old white dude that grew up in Burlington. My outlook on the city of Burlington is no doubt, both of us have lived in Burlington a long time, but our perceptions and outlooks are a whole lot different. There's no doubt about that. What we're telling you today is, and what we've been saying for the last 4 or 5 years since the three of us have been in this position, is that it's the communication, it's the understanding, and the mutual trust that if you have concerns, questions, or problems, especially with the way one of the officers in our department are handling themselves, it needs to be brought to our attention, just as you did. Now, will we change the day-to-day mistake that an officer makes? No, because they're all human. They're all going to make mistakes at some point. But when there's outright racial profiling, prejudices being put forth on whatever group it may be in Burlington, biases being displayed on how they do their job, that's the stuff that the three of us and the city managers sit and look at every day we go to work. Every day.
Well,
and that's the reason why those types of discussions that you have with Major Kramer, with us sitting in this panel, with the rest of us in this room, deal specifically with why we're here. What is it we need to look at specifically? Like I said, I can't take your perception unless you come in and sit down and go, this is a concern and a problem, then we have to deal with it directly.
and the thing is, on that, if that person that hit my wife hadn't been as nice as she was, if she had been white and been maybe a little loudmouth or something with that officer, he would have arrested her and sent her to jail. I just
You know,
find that-
I'll tell you this. Our officers handle 30 to 40,000 calls for service a year. Some of these officers themselves will deal with 1,500 to 2,000 calls for service themselves a year. Will they make mistakes? Yes, they will. But if we know that officers are making a decision solely based on the color of someone's skin, trust me when I say, this man right here and the two of us will not tolerate that. And if it's going on, not that it hasn't and not that it won't in the future, but the fact that we learn about it and that we find out about it and that we're made aware of it, believe me, changes will happen, whether it be across the department or individually with that officer.
Well, let me just ask this general question. What is the policy if someone gets stopped, or, if someone's in an accident, or even gets stopped, and they have no driver's license? What's the policy?
It's up to the officer.
It's up to the officer?
Let me help explain that just a little bit, because there's lots and lots of differences here with no driver's license. There's a big difference.
4 years, no driver's license, what's the difference there?
Well, let me explain. Give me a chance to explain. No driver's license is a scheduled violation in the compendium. And that's what happens. They get a ticket, and then we sure prefer they don't drive. But obviously, as you say, you see it in the paper all the time, they do it anyway. Okay, now hear me out. But there's a difference between driving while barred, it's an aggravated misdemeanor, indictable offense. Driving under revocation, first offense, is a serious misdemeanor, indictable offense. Those offenses, the reason you're seeing people go to jail for those offenses is because they're indictable. And we take people to jail for those offenses. No driver's license is not indictable. It's a simple misdemeanor. I'm not saying it's never happened, because like you said, there could be circumstances, but 9 out of 10 times, no driver's license, or probably 99 out of 100 times, no driver's license is going to get a ticket.
Well, then, you say it's not an indictable offense?
It's not. It's a simple
Well,
misdemeanor.
why do you always ask for a driver's license then?
Because it's so different than speeding, running a stop sign. It's an offense. It's just not indictable.
Okay.
I want
Okay, we can move on.
I want to ask a question. Because we got, school started, there's going to be kids driving tonight, tomorrow night in the dark, home from a game, haven't driven the night before. If one of them gets pulled over, to parents in general, what should they tell their kids, and black parents in particular, what should they tell their kids to do if they get pulled over by the police? Especially, knowing the stuff in the news, parents, what do I tell my kids? How do I make sure everybody makes it home safe?
That's one of my questions that I have for you guys. So we'll go down to what I got. One of the things I was going to ask was about the hiring practices. Hey, just a minute. Hey, one of the things we're going to ask is about the hiring practices. We're saying this is a diverse community. Have you guys made any effort, say, to hire people of color to be on the police force? That's one of my questions.
Yeah, for sure. I'll let Major Grimshaw answer that, because it was kind of his idea, and he put together a program. It's a minority recruiting committee that we put together, and I'll let him get you all the details on that. Because we did test, and we send out to the minority outreach, and we were getting no applicants. Nothing. What we were doing was not working. And so I got to give him all the credit. He came up with this idea, and it's a great idea.
What we've done is, when Chief Beard was appointed chief, one of the things that he sat down and after having conversations with Mr. Furneaux was we took a real hard look at what the department obviously looked like, where we were at. And at the time, we had a 42-man department. It was a 42 white department, 42-person white department. At the time, we had 3 females in our department. And one of the things that we knew we had to do was to take a look at our community and look at our department and realize that something had to change and this outreach needed to change. Now, we've been doing recruiting, we've been going to colleges, we've been doing what we thought was a valiant effort at recruiting, and it wasn't working. So there's several things that happened. One, I started attending more and more conferences around the state NAACP meetings, started talking to more officers, black officers around the state, started talking to more administrators around the state on what types of recruiting efforts are taking place. Another thing that was brought to my attention was, if you want to get to how do you recruit in our minority communities, well, you need to get the minority community involved. And so what we started was a recruitment committee. And I looked at different factors around the community and brought about 8 or 9 different people. Several people in this audience tonight were a member of that, part of that last year. We made leaps and bounds, not only on the recruiting side, but also on how the department polices itself and how we interact and move about the community. And we learned a ton. Specifically, who we learned the most from were 2 high school students that brought in a wealth of information to our department. on how we police, how we act, how we present ourselves, how we make ourselves more approachable, especially in the minority communities. Great dialogue. One of the things they brought up is you need more input from more members of the black community. You need more input. So I started reaching out to NAACP, the different social organizations, the churches, extending that. We need your help. We need your partnership. We need your input and your insight. You know, I brought up earlier that I'm the 52-year-old white guy that grew up in Burlington. My message, my input, and my insight isn't going to work for that young man or woman that is maybe pondering a career in law enforcement, that's from a Hispanic community, that's from a black community, that's from an Asian community. I don't have the dialogue necessary. I need to bring members of that community in. I need their support and their partnership. That recruiting committee was one. Spending time, actually, we put on a career expo. I went to the Gentlemen's Club, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you brought the idea up and went, why don't you have a career expo in the neighborhood that you're trying to recruit? Why don't you do that? I went back to the chief and I went, I just come up with a great idea. I can't come say I come up with a great idea. There's a great idea that was presented to me. And it was the first of many. And we're going to build on that again this year. And I am happy to say a young lady walked in that day and raised her hand and said, I want to be a member of the Burlington Police Department. And she was sworn in last night as our first black female reserve police officer, was at that career expo, spoke with all the officers. She was sworn in and received her badge last night. And she told me today when she came in to fill out all of her paperwork that she's going to be a reserve for a short period of time because she's going to be a full member of the police department when we test again in May. So, I mean, the efforts are there. Now, we also we were this close to hiring a young black female out of Chicago. We had offered her the job. She had done her polygraph exam, her MMPIs. We had completed her background. We had given her a start date. She was going for her medical physicals. I got a phone call 3 weeks ago at 11 o'clock at night on my cell phone. The young lady was not wanting to tell me, but she said, I have to pull the offer of employment. I just was offered a job at a police department an hour from my home with a larger department, and I'm going to take that position. I can't blame her. I can't blame her. We had 5 African-American applicants apply this year at testing. The most we've had in 7, 8, 9, 10 years. It's not where we want to be, believe me when I say that. But we've talked to the churches, we've talked to the local social organizations, the scholarship offerings. We're continuing to work. I have just established this year's recruiting committee. We meet next Tuesday, our first meeting, again to start the efforts to increase again, not only our applicant pool and not only those that we're hiring, but to increase those people that will bring those partnerships into the department. I had a conversation with the young lady that we just sworn in last night. When we went to take her polygraph up in Clinton, we had a 2.5-hour drive up to Clinton. We had great conversations. And one of the things we talked about was cultural diversity. And one of the things that she said to me was, you know, you can bring all of the highfalutin teachers and instructors into your department to teach you all you want about cultural diversity. But she said the true cultural diversity is going to happen when we're working side by side. And they know who I am, they understand who I am, they appreciate who I am. Because the guy that comes in with the briefcase and teaches us how to treat members of other communities within our own community is good, but when we really know who each other are, when we really understand who each other are, is what's important. And so we're headed in that direction. We're making the right steps, but again, it's the continued efforts and partnerships that are going to make it continue in the direction we want to go.
I have to back you up because he did have the expo and he did talk to us, you know, and now it's going to the community to try to get family and relatives and friends, you know, to also try to get involved in the police department. Take it because it's good money, it's a good secure job, and we need people of color in the department.
One of the things, I don't know if you can address, that I brought up to the chief, when we went through this expo and we went through this last training cycle and had a lot of folks who didn't pass the test. We need to have some efforts put into place for how do we get people learning and training in advance so they're ready when the test comes up and they're better prepared to pass. What are we doing to try to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. But we have partnered with workforce development, and we've developed a program how you can go out there and get assistance specifically for police type testing. And for the first year, last year, the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy puts out this post-test. It's not a test that we come up with or anybody. It is certified through the state. If you want to be a policeman in the state of Iowa, you're going to take this post-test. But for the first time, the company that makes that test finally said, hey, we got some online study guides. You can do online testing. You can take sample tests, sample questions. And like the major said, not everybody has the same resources. And so we partnered with workforce development. They're on board. They got computers set up out there so people can actually come out there and start to understand what this post-test looks like and study towards passing this post-test and working on those job-related skills, because that is 100% out of what we can or can't do. It's a mandated thing through the state. And the major's exactly right. And the city manager, we discovered that, well, if they're not passing the test, what can we do to help? And so that's one thing that we put in place to help. But with that said, those of you that are from Keokuk, Iowa, that's where I was born and raised, and Jesse Hill's doing a wonderful job. It's unfortunate he left Keokuk for you and come to Burlington. It's really fortunate for us. He is a wonderful police officer. Update on Jordan Smith. As you know, Jordan Smith was an officer here in Burlington. And that's another thing we struggle with here in Burlington. I mean, we pay, I think, a very competitive wage for cities our size. But when you get quality, educated minority candidates that then become certified within the state of Iowa, it's the golden pass. And I know I can't blame Jordan Smith one iota. I mean, he went to Ankeny and made a name for himself up there, probably one of the most recognized departments in the state. And since then, now he's over in Omaha, Nebraska, which is, again, they have such a more diverse police department with different areas and fields, I mean, with the federal task force and such. So there's a little update on where Jordan went and what he's doing one.
I want to get back to the teenager driving.
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking that is that I know we've talked once before about, I grew up in a neighborhood when police pull you over, you don't take your hand off the wheel. So the officer thought I was crazy because he's telling me he wants to see my wallet. And I'm thinking he's crazy because he's not telling me which hand to move. And it got tense. So what would you tell a parent to tell their child?
Well, it's a whole list of things that when they get stopped. And there's a paper over there, a newspaper out of the Des Moines Register that lists some of the things that the police can do if they pull you over. It's over on that table's got like 7 or 8 things. So that'd be something to read and check out. But like I said, if you do get pulled over, we got this thing what we call the talk. It's not, what do you tell your kids if they get stopped?
A great question. Good.
I can answer that. Because I told both my kids, and they regurgitated this back to me after they got out of college and realized that mom and dad weren't as crazy as they thought. But when they were young, I told them, I said, if you get stopped by the police, it's pretty simple, The officer's always looking, and from my point of view, I'm always looking to see what your kids are doing. And when a young person or anybody gets stopped, as a matter of fact, and I still do it because I carry a gun when I go with me in my car, and I want the officer to know that I have a gun in the car and I'm not reaching for it. So I'm at the same, when I'm not in this uniform, I'm the same as everybody else to him. And so my hands are on the wheel, and when he asks for the driver's license and registration, or before he comes up the car, I'm not digging in the glove box or doing any of that. I wait for him to get up to the car and ask for a driver's license, a registration, proof of insurance, whatever it is. And I'll tell him, and I've told my kids, tell them it's in the glove compartment, I'm going to get it, or it's in my wallet, or it's in my purse, it's in the floorboard. If you tell the officer what you're going to do, it should not be an issue at all. And you're exactly right, Orlando, when you talk about keeping your hands up on the wheel. And one of the scariest things, and only you probably, if they did traffic stops with you when you went to the academy, or the Citizens Academy, it's a very daunting thing when walking up on a car. And we try to not tell the officers or have the officers think that, it's just a routine traffic stop. Because it's not routine, because you don't know who the person is, just like you said, that's having a bad day sitting in the driver's seat. So, and yeah, or they're carrying, and if you are a person that has a permit to carry, by all means, don't be reaching around the car, and if you have a gun on you, just tell the officer where it's at. Don't say, I have a gun on my side, like that. You know, don't do that. Just tell them, you know, I have a gun in the car, I have a permit to carry. That officer is gonna know that, hey, he has a gun, he's telling me about it, and he'll tell you, well, do you have a permit, or he'll ask you a series of questions probably before you even get to the gun part. So, you know, the verbal communication when you get up there, if you allow it to happen and just wait for the officer to give the instruction, they'll do it when you get to the car. If you're gonna tell your kids something, you know, when they go to school, if they get stopped, you know, pull over to the right-hand side of the road, you know, you don't have to worry about it if it's a 4-lane road or whatever, because if the officer stops you, you know, just pull over, and if he wants you to move after he comes up the car, he'll tell you, hey, let's pull up around the corner, you know, those kind of things. But when he comes up to the car, just wait for him to tell you, you know, what he wants.
Okay, they were saying something in that newspaper about, they asked you to get out of the car. Do what they asked you to do.
Correct.
Then it said, what about the passenger? Is the passenger obligated to get out of the car too?
There's some case law that says that the passenger does not have to get out of the car, but if there's things inside of the car that we feel that could harm the officer, I believe the officer has every right to ask the passenger to get out of the car to remove them from that situation, pat them down, and make sure that it's safe for them and
One of the things we talk about, like I told my kids, don't argue back. You know, and one of the things that I was asking about was anger management. Because everybody gets mad. Every man, or little child on this earth gets mad. Little kids get mad. I think man starts when you're born, you slap you on the butt. So, even though you might, and a lot of times when you get pulled over, you're already mad. Just being stopped, and you're the one speaking. You know, just the idea. So, I tell my kids, stay calm, don't get mad, don't get in a verbal conflict, because it could get nasty. So, we have to tell our kids that, especially if we want to take the doubt out as much as you can, because you don't know what the position that officer has, right?
Is there a set way that your officers, when they approach a car, that they say, like, do you know why I'm pulling you over? Because I know when I was a rookie, we'd come out and say, what did you slow that light for? But our department came up with, everybody would have to say, do you know why I pulled you over? Do you know how to that way?
Yeah. In the FTO program, they go over, you know, how to approach the car, of course, you know, so they're safe, of course, and then when they get to the car, they introduce themselves and explain to them, say, hey, I need to see your driver's license, registration, so on and so forth. So they each kind of have a variation of that. I don't think it's not written down that you have to say this, if that makes sense. But they're supposed to introduce themselves and say, you know, this is why I pulled you over, or can I see your driver's license, or how fast the questioning may start there. And sometimes those, when we ask, you know how fast you're going, some people, it'll kind of set the tone. Some people will say, yeah, I know I was going 68 miles an hour, and it's a 50 mile an hour zone, you know, because some people are, I mean, they understand that, you know, I'm gonna have times when I'm speeding and accept that, because 9 times out of 10 you don't get caught. It's the one time you regret, you know, that you're speeding, you know, that you do get caught, and we're all guilty of it. Everybody in this room, that anybody says they're not, and that's me included. So I guess my point being is when they come up to the car, they're taught how they're supposed to approach the car. Do we have a policy on it? No, but they're instructed how to be courteous and go up to the car and present themselves to the person who's involved.
That's where it sets the tone right there. Sure. That, or if I've been trying to pull you over and you're trying to find a nice place to park, it also starts getting high.
Yes, and very much so. And that's why I said earlier, you know, don't worry about where you're at, because the officer is taking the responsibility of, hey, this is where I want to stop you at. And so if it's on like, and people have a hard time on Roosevelt pulling over, they'll go clear to the, you know, the other ends of the earth before they pull over because they don't want to stop on there. You know, pull over, and if I don't feel comfortable out here, because I'm the one getting out of the car, you're in your car, and and I get out of the car, if I don't feel comfortable there, I'll come up and tell you, hey, let's move up around the corner and off out of the busy street, and we'll finish our business there, if that makes sense. So I know kind of what I'm dealing with before you. I may get your driver's license and stuff like that, and then we'll pull over. But if you just, when you see the police lights behind you, or the squad car lights, you just pull over to the right-hand side, and the officer will come up and take care of it.
What's your ride-along policy for people that, I mean, I got you because I was in the Citizen Academy. Get to know your police officers. Get to know the ones in your neighborhood.
Yeah, and there's a little bit, because I do deal with this quite a bit, because we have people come in routinely and ask if they can ride along. I do like a mini, I want to say a mini interview, just so I make sure that, because there's people out there that just want to get into our cars and just wreak havoc, you know, whatever, whether it's on social media or something like that. So I kind of, you know, people have ill intent for us, and just because we wear a uniform. And I protect myself from that, or our department from that. So I kind of vet them out a little bit and say, you know, what's your purpose? What are you trying to find out? You know, who are you? Identify them, so on and so forth. And we do allow them to ride along 4-6 hours. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure that's why I'm standing. My name is June Marie. My son Q is friend of the week with the program. So I want to thank you for it. Time well spent for him. My question is, for this meeting here is, does the police department have a policy to effectively communicate to the minority or African American community when there is a crisis? And the reason why I'm bringing this up, I have friends in Milwaukee, very upset at what went on. A lot of people have anger, a lot of people want to blame one side or another, because it's easy to do. Do we have a process to communicate to the community when there is the next big fight at DHS, or when there is a teen shooting or teen fight or whatever? How does the police department communicate quickly and effectively with the leadership, president, pastor? You know, do you have a process? And if you don't, would you be open to setting one up? That way, when people have questions, and a lot of times we come to church and say, Pastor, this is what happened, and we have all of this, and they don't have any answers. Would you guys be open with the police department, be open to something that a program like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a twofold, I got a twofold answer for you, but I mean, typically if we have a critical incident like that, I mean, we're going to get out a press release just as quick as we can. And through the email system first, it's set up for all the media outlets. And so it's going to go to all of them at the same time with that critical information. And the next thing we're going to do is put it on our Facebook page. And you really need to like us on Facebook. We're updating that thing every day. And in all seriousness, if you have liked that page, if there's anything critical happening in this town, it's going to get thrown on that page. And it'll be just as quick as any of the media releases that go out. Because we understand the importance of social media. And it's happened before. And once we push that out, I mean, Freddie Starling, for example, or Orlando, or, I mean, if there's any concerns, they're right on the phone. They're calling down there going, hey, I need some more details. I got people asking me questions, and we totally have that open door policy. And we'll get those questions answered as quick as we can. But the one thing I have to ask for is some patience in certain situations too. Because if it involves an officer, we got to find out the facts. We got to find out what happened. Not what everybody's saying happened, but what happened. We're going to give you the specific information, the date, the time, the location, and those facts that surround that as best we can. And then you got to give us a little bit of a chance to make sure that when we start pushing out what happened or what the investigation has led to, that is the gospel. That is the facts as we know it. So it's kind of a little bit of a twofold thing there. But as an example, social media, Sarah was sworn in yesterday afternoon, and we took some pictures and we posted that on our Facebook site. And at 2 o'clock this afternoon, the major came in and said, you're not going to believe it, but 14,000 people have viewed that picture already. So we understand the absolute importance of that social media and how fast we can get a message to the entire community.
And we just specifically with Mr. Cole there at the school system, our pastors and clergy, able to interact at the school level when there is a crisis. I mean, there's incidents that happen on a daily basis that the school deals with, but I'm talking about the big things that happen.
Yep, I can
Police is
address that.
always there.
Yeah.
And that's what they're supposed to do, but the other component is the community that needs to be there also.
Right.
to help.
As you'll recall, we used to turn every kid loose at the high school over lunch. That's chaos. We went to seniors in good standing, can leave, get ready to be an adult. The rest of you, you're staying here. You're not leaving. I went to the faith-based community, and the ministers showed up in mass, and they would interact with the kids, talk with the kids. And we didn't go with the police department because we didn't want that feel. We wanted the ministers, and the ministers showed up in mass. The blessing that we didn't know was coming when we had the incident with the young man that was murdered. Our students came to school, and the experts told me they'll go to their church, they'll go to a house, they'll be all spread out, and they'll deal with this for weeks. They all came to our school and met with the ministers. So yes, we do that. And the next big fight might be at Notre Dame. Well, we're talking bias here. Because we do have the largest African American population of students. So the fight might not be at BHS.
And the school also has a system in place now. I think you just updated it last year, where they can send text messages out, and our school resource officers have access to that. We've got a close working relationship with the school system now. We've got school resource officers in the middle schools and high school, and so a lot of times that crisis, especially when it involves masses of people, obviously a lot of times will involve our young people. And so reaching parents, reaching civic leaders, reaching the masses of people quickly, if need be, especially if it involves students or young people, we would reach out to the school and ask for their assistance as well in reaching large numbers of parents and students all at once.
And Darren, the other thing we need to, we were approached by the Quad County DCAT, Davenport, and Safe Families. And we've got that going so we can get a kid in crisis into a home quick without dealing with the slowness of the Department of DHS. But the other thing is, Darren and I have met, we've talked about handle with care. So when there's a crisis with the Des Moines County Sheriff deals with it, Burlington Police deal with it, the next morning, the point of contact of the school gets a call and says, hey, we dealt with this last night. These children are going to walk into your school tomorrow. Handle them with care. So there is a lot going on, and the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, and the school sharing resources, working together. So we are getting stuff in place.
Thank you. One thing I got to bring this up. It's something that I've been listening to since I've been here, and that is, Major Grimshaw, when I address you, I'm saying Major, because I was told that. I address Chief Baird as Chief Baird, Major Kramer, Superintendent Coleman, and if Sheriff Johnston would get up, I'd address it this way. Now I know Pastor Orlando Dow and Pastor Starling are very well known to the police department. And I'm here, this what you said, this might help. You're addressing them by their name. I know you know them well, but that's the pastor. This is the pastor. Pastor Dow, Pastor Starling. I know you know him by first name, but would you want me to say, hey, Darren? Hey, now, see, that's one of the things you do tomorrow.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
No, I do. And point well taken.
All right.
And Owen, you can call me Dennis if you want.
No, I'm gonna call you Major, because that's what you told me to call you Major Kramer. And I'm gonna call you Major.
I didn't hear you say that, but I said that's who I am.
Well, that's what you think. It wasn't.
Okay, let's move on to another question.
Well,
Wait a minute, hold on. Did you have something you want to say, Robert?
No,
You can go on.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, you know, from what I'm sitting here listening to, you know, we all know why we're here. It's obvious. And I think our children, our young people today, need good role models. And the best role models they can have are we who are sitting in this room. I don't see this as a black and white issue. I see it as a people issue. And when our young people can identify the rapport that we have with one another is the best place to begin. Guaranteed. Because they are going to model what they see in how you and I communicate. They're going to take it to the street. I mean at an early age, and it's going to stick with them until they become of age to react to what they've already witnessed.
Does the department know of ways to better interact with minorities or the community in general? One of the things, we had a meeting, it's called CARE, it's called Careful Association for Rights and Equality. And one of the things was, we had an assistant chief there, and we mentioned that for better interaction, when there's a black function, that they need to get out of the car and be involved. I don't know, there's something going on viral. I saw on the way here about a policeman I was dancing somewhere. You're walking here. No,
We got it here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's what you need. You need the police to get out of their car, be involved. So what about the other way? What about, don't you guys have events and the police against the fire department or anything like that? Well, once again, I think the community should be involved with them, bring your children, they interact, so you get to know each other. It just makes it a lot better. Did anybody else got anything they want to suggest about that?
You know, I will mention one thing. When I talked about our recruitment committee that we put together last year, there's two young men that were involved with that. I believe Q's dad is in the audience tonight. But Q and Malik came down, they sat there in the first meeting, they were very apprehensive about speaking their mind. And as the meeting went on, they became a little more, they kept looking at one another. And the concept of the meeting was, talk to us, we have broad shoulders, tell us what's on your mind, speak your mind, give us your thoughts and input. And it took Q and Malik a little while to loosen up. But man, when they did, they didn't hold any punches and they laid it out there. There's a lot of things those young men said to us in that meeting that we took to heart, and it changed. It had an impact and it afforded change in the department. Although some of it slight and small, some of it resounding. And it was little things like what you just made a comment about on the manner of dressing, getting out of the car, maybe talking. One of the things that they said to us is you guys are intimidating to us. I'm afraid to walk up and talk to you. And if it's you with a couple of your buddies, meaning other police officers, you're always standing in groups, you're always leaning on your gun, and you're standing there talking to one another, and I'm afraid to come talk to you. Now I'm going to tell you, when I talk about being a 52-year-old white guy and having different perceptions, that's part of it. Because I did not have that perception when I was growing up. Q and Malik did. And Q and Malik looked at me and said, I want to get to know who you are, I really do. I really want to get to know who you are. I can't do it when you're in the uniform. Can you dress down and come hang out with us? Can you put on a pair of slacks and a shirt maybe when you come hang out with us? Can you come get to know who we are so we're more comfortable about approaching you? It's a small thing, but it was a big thing to them because they said it. And it was big to them. And so I went back to the chief the next day and I said, it's amazing some of the things that I never thought about would make a difference. And it's a little thing. And it's those little conversations that we have, it's those little things that are brought up that impact, change, and actually make that work. So at the high school, when we go into the schools, when we go to events, a lot of times the chief or the major and I will look at one another and go, it's not worth the uniform tomorrow, let's just wear a pair of slacks and show up. And it works because those young men that brought that up came up to me and went, you were listening to us, weren't you? You ain't wearing your uniform today. What I'm getting at is we may not like all the time what you have to say to us. We may not like your opinions, This man lays it on the line to me every time he sees me, and I appreciate that. I don't always like what he tells me, and a lot of times I walk out of the room or leave a meeting going, oh, he got on me there. But I guarantee I'm learning from it. And him saying something for me to address one of these gentlemen by their first name, my bad. I learned from it. I guarantee you the next time I see him or one of the reverends or the pastors, I will say, Reverend Dial. I mean, that's just, but that's what we need. We have to have that. It's important. So the dialogue has to continue, and that's so important, so very much important, especially with our young kids, having the belief and the feeling that they can approach us at any time and tell us, hey, this is uncomfortable for us. This isn't working for us. And we have to continue that. And so any way that we can do that, we're going to continue to do it. Whether we like hearing it or not, we're going to continue to do it.
Okay, the last thing,
I have a question. So is that the reason why there's a wall between the police department and the community? Because there's a certain arm that you on? You know, you can't lay down, not lay down, but, you know, be comfortable?
I think a lot of it has to do with the young age, and I feel like the children of this community are the future of this community, and we are so invested in the children. I mean, it is mandatory. If you were a day shift at the Burlington Police Department, you will be in a school every day for at least 20 minutes. And you won't go to the same school. You'll go to a different school every day, and you'll do it at a different time. And we've injected SROs into the middle school and into the high school. And after-school programming, we have officers at after-school programming every time they have it. And that is crucial. That is where we're going to build this rapport so they don't feel that way. They're used to the uniform. They're used to seeing who you are. And over a course of time, you become a person to them. You don't become the policeman. And I truly believe as these kids grow into teenagers, into young adults, it's going to have a big impact. And what we're trying to do, and this is our first year of this, is our officer that was in the middle schools for 2 years with these kids, he's moving to the high school with the kids. And so we're going to have hopefully the same officer with these kids through graduation. And then we inserted a new officer into the middle schools, and we're just going to hopefully get this thing to start the cycle. And I've been to some of the after-school programs that have like CSI night with the kids and do fingerprinting or whatever, and I see those interactions. And there's nothing any more valuable than that. And if that won't help break that wall down over the course of time, I don't know what's going to, and I am really confident that's going to make it easy.
did you want to say something, Reverend Charlie?
I'm a Christian, and that's I see the Burlington. I'm grateful and thankful to be here. Grateful to our police department. We have one of the best chiefs in the world. I can speak for that. I think this coming together helps to break down some of the barriers concerning our upbringing, our culture. I get to understand you better. You get to understand me better. Don't have all the answers to give me, but let me give you, what's in my heart. Hear me, because, my background is different from your background. Maybe. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying. So, I'm trying to explain some things that I may be dealing with. The officers are dealing with certain things during the course of the day. I have to live with situations that you may not have to live with, poverty, and you name it. And it's not your fault. I'm not pointing the finger. I'm just saying it's just some things that just happen that way. It's just less fortunate. But I think we should have show more compassion to the less fortunate. Come in and co-mingle with it. Don't come in just to be doing well and just want to show up. No. If it don't mean it from the heart that I mean well. I mean you well, And one of the ways that we really work on this, and the school superintendent can verify, the chief can verify. When we had a Dr. King celebration, we try to bring a barrier of people. We have a panel We try to share ideas and get opinions, how we can work together. I understand you, you understand me, how I can help you, how you can help me. And then it brings, we really need to regain that confidence in one another. I think that's a big gap there. We have, I don't want to say we, but I've seen the confidence and the leadership isn't there. Certain situations, and then you get people, no, they're not going to let you have this, they're not going to give you this, they're not, and then that get into the mind and mindset of people, and they go on, and then you come up, you have rebellion. Well, you're not going to get anything, you just might as well take, they're not going to give you, they're not going to listen to you, they're not going to, I'm just throwing out some things that I know for myself that is the fact. But I think coming together, like we're coming together tonight, all of the resources that's made available to all of us, and also it can be there, but if we don't take advantage of it, if we don't learn to respect one another, and things still not going to change. And then if we don't teach this to our children, the respect, situations that I've gone through in my life, it's just automatic. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, uncertain about it. I have no problem dealing with the police force. I try to do what they tell me to do, and I know there are people that lies have been taken out, even if that, I understand that. But I'm just saying, I think we need to instill this in our children, our grandchildren, respect, obey the law. A lot of it, we may point at the thing that the law enforcement, but a lot of it isn't. A lot of it, and I want to say this because I really appreciate Chief Beard a few months ago when that gentleman had a shotgun or whatever the gun was out. We were coming out of the Cedar Rapids, and it could have been a chaos situation. But I thank God for the way that the chief, no doubt, has trained your officers that no one was shot because their life could be in danger as well as this young man. So I really appreciate that's some mother's son that life could have been taken out, and that's some officer could have been taken out. So I really, really appreciate that. No doubt they are communicating and trying to understand one another, especially after that. So I thank you.
I just want to say real quick, Officer's Honor with the future Greyhound football team. You want to talk about officers and kids get together. Y'all come to the games, you'll see, he's out there in his uniform. We have one of your sergeants, I think, he's also a coach. It will make a difference. I did police athletic league. Y'all come out to the football games for these little Greyhounds, and you'll see these officers are trying to make a difference. Y'all come out there too, because you'll see parents that you've never seen before. So little situations like that, come out there.
Okay, I got one other thing that we have to keep moving about. We're running out of time. What if we do have a complaint? What if you got a complaint? Law enforcement. What should we do then? And you said, I want you to take that.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Fred. I mean, obviously there's several things you can do, but first and foremost, we ask for an opportunity to look into it. Give us a chance. And if the outcome isn't what you think it should be, I mean, there's several other remedies. And so all we were asking when I talked to Freddie is at least give us a chance. I mean, there's the ombudsman and there's civil rights violations. There's all these things out there, and we're fully aware of all of those. But we just ask for an opportunity.
Are you even allowed to tell us how the complaint was resolved?
We can't tell you what discipline was taken, but what we can tell you is that there either was or there wasn't. But that's not something that the Burlington Police Department made up. I mean, that is the law, and so we're bound by that. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but that is the way it is.
But I want to also put out there that a person can seek legal counsel, dealing in the legal system, and they're not happy with it, get an attorney, or seek legal action. You can also file a complaint with the NAACP. You can file a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, also the state and local Civil Rights Commission. But one of the things you want to do, though, if you do have a complaint, is to write it out as soon as possible. Take good notes, get witnesses' names, the officers' names that are involved, with date, time, and where it took place. So you got something right there to go with when you file your complaint. Yes.
I just wanted to say that by the number of people who have come out indicates there is an interest in these types of forums. It is healthy dialogue, and hopefully some solutions can be brought about as a result of this, and I'm hopeful, I would suggest that on a periodic basis, hopefully the NAACP can continue to have these types of discussions periodically.
Did you want to make a quick comment?
How do they feel about, now this has been going on for a long time, social media, being videotaped while you're performing in a few weeks?
How do we like it? Well, believe it or not, we've been doing videotape for a long time. We've had dash cams down our squad cars for 12 years, maybe 15 years. The body cameras, we were one of the first agencies in the state, in the country, to put body cameras on our officers, and that's 2.5 years ago now. We've had body cameras on all of our officers. There's policy that I think it's been updated 2 or 3 times since we implemented the use of cameras on when and how evidence is stored, so on and so forth. That's a whole other discussion. We're living in an age now where we're always being monitored, whether it be audio, video. We were just having that conversation the other day. When we started in law enforcement, there was nothing being recorded, nothing.
So
now,
what about an individual happening, they're seeing something going on there?
yeah, an individual, we get recorded all the time. It shows up on YouTube all the time. There's videos of the police department doing their job all over YouTube, and we understand that. The only
Is it
thing we ask
illegal?
people, no, it's not illegal, not at all, not at all.
But there is one thing we would caution you on, and please take this back to the community. When you're doing that, especially if you get too close and it's night like this and that light automatically comes on, we really don't like that light shining in our eyes when it's dark. Because the minute you pull that light away, now we can't see. Yeah, so we would ask that if you're gonna do that and the light's on, you get it a little distance.
Yeah. But no, we get videotaped a lot, and it's just, that's law enforcement today. And we just have to get used to it. Those of us that have been in a long time didn't start that way. That's the way it is now. We just need to get used to the fact that everything we do is being recorded and videotaped.
We can't interfere with your duties while we're doing it.
Correct.
Not legally.
No, and we haven't really had a lot of issues with that locally. I mean, we've had a few instances, but
It's like the chief said, if there's that distance maintained, because those cameras can shoot from me to you with no problem. I don't need to be right up on you to videotape, and that's something that needs to be taken back to the community. We're okay with it, but it's and the media can probably tell you that they have a place that we ask them to stay from a certain distance from us, and they can probably talk to you about that a little bit. But if they would just keep the distance, and that would be fine, so we wouldn't have that issue of anybody interfering with what we're trying to do, or that we look at them like, what are you about to do that I don't know you're going to do. So those kind of situations, if they just kept their distance, and yeah, they can record anything or do, that's not an issue.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. In closing, y'all ready to go, right? We must abide by our laws and seek equal justice and support legal reform, which is a big thing that's going on dealing with sentencing. I thank all of you for taking time to be here for open discussion and sharing your feelings and insight. It's all about diversity. You need to spend time together to learn what changes are needed to be made for a better society for all. So give yourselves all a big hand and thanks for coming. Back there,
what you thought, what you take out of it. You need to do anything real quick. All right.